Hey everybody, Mr. Gibson here. So for this week's PLC, we're going to be looking at a promising practice. And this promising practice is student choice elaborate assignments. So for assignments in the elaborate portion of the 5E lesson plan, I allow students to choose from multiple options of different assignments based on how they feel they've accomplished the learning targets. So what this does basically is, so for the 5E lesson plan, you've got engage, where you're just trying to pique their interest, maybe access some prior knowledge. The explore activities is really the meat of the unit. That's where students are going to explore the concepts on their own through different activities that you may have designed. And then the explain portion of the 5E lesson plan is where you kind of explain everything, or you give them opportunities to catch any misconceptions that they may have had from the explore portion of the unit. Now, at that point, ideally, the students will be at least proficient on all of the learning targets, all of the content that you'd want them to know, all of the skills you'd want them to be able to do. But the fourth E in the 5E lesson plan is elaborate or extension. In this E, usually you would expound upon the content and go a little bit deeper, maybe apply it to a career or some sort of real world phenomenon. And so what I've done, I've actually modified the elaborate activities to where the extension that they're doing for that assignment is their choice. Okay, so let me just show you an example to help explain that a little bit. So here's an example of one. This is from the body systems unit. So you can tell they've got 3 different assignments here, okay, based on their understanding. So when they complete these assignments, and you're looking at how many students did the assignment based on whether or not they had a strong understanding or a moderate understanding or a weak understanding, not only were those assignments differentiated for how these students felt like they were doing for these learning targets, but it also gives you some insight as to their confidence level with that content. So for this one, for the strong understanding, they watch a video about a career in neurology, and then they answer questions about that career. If they feel like they have a moderate understanding, then they're going to read an article about liver function, which is a little more straightforward, just diving deeper into one specific body system, and not as accelerated, or as far as that goes in differentiation, as the strong understanding assignment. And then if they feel like they have a weak understanding of the content up to this point, then here is just a concept map, and they're supposed to use use web resources to construct a concept map or a graphic organizer about these levels of organization. And that's something that's just very straightforward, going to reinforce things that are directly found in the learning targets. Okay, not really expounding upon them, because if they have a weak understanding from the get-go, and you try to dive deeper, then you're just going to further discourage them. So if they feel like they have a weak understanding, basically this assignment will just reiterate the main concepts for them. This is another one. This is for our current unit that's going on right now. It says for this assignment, you have a choice, and I've got 3 options. If they feel like they have a solid understanding of cellular energy and bioenergetics, it's photosynthesis and cellular respiration, then option 1 will let them dive deeper into applying the law of conservation of matter and actually help them learn how to balance chemical reactions, which is a chemistry standard. If they feel like they have a moderate understanding of the content and just need a little more reinforcement, but are still ready to dive a little bit deeper, then for this option, it's going to basically let them measure the rate of respiration for yeast based on temperature. It's just an assignment that's going to reinforce those ideas while diving a little bit deeper, not quite as deep as if they felt like they had a strong understanding, but they still get that concept expounded upon. And then option 3, if they come into this after the explain activity and they feel like they still are struggling with this content, they don't have a solid grip on these learning targets, then this assignment is simply an article that fully explains the content, which in this case is photosynthesis and cellular respiration and how they're related, and then they answer questions for a concept attainment quiz, which is found in STEM Scopes, that when I look at that, I can see, okay, did they make strides into growing their understanding of this content? And so going back to the promising practice here, what this allows me to do is it allows me to differentiate instruction, give the students choice in their instruction, which they appreciate, and it lets me determine student proficiency. So I can look at those assignments, provide feedback, and address any last-minute misconceptions before we get to the evaluate step. It also lets me gauge student confidence, because as a teacher, I always feel like it's my goal to instill confidence in my students. And so you may have noticed in the description, it says, don't just pick the easiest one. So hopefully by the time we get to this assignment, I have, a fair number of students picking the harder, more in-depth assignment because they feel confident in this material. If I have a ton of students picking the one that goes along with weak understanding, then that tells me that I have not built up enough confidence in them with this material. So this is really good for differentiation. It's really good for letting me gauge their proficiency right before a quiz or test, and it's really good at letting me determine how confident they are in the material. Okay, here's my most recent assessment data. This is for third period honors biology. So you can see the scale here. Any scores between 26 and 28 is an A, 23 to 25 is a B, and so on. So I feel like they did fairly well on this assessment. I was pretty impressed. This is biochemistry is difficult stuff, especially metabolic biochemistry. This is the data for fourth period. So you can see, again, 26 to 28 is an A. We had a couple down here in the lower C and D range on this one. It's a slightly bigger class, so with a bigger sample size, that's probably bound to happen. I would like to see these trend upwards, and I feel like in the future units, when we get into more ecology, we're going to see a lot of this data trend to the right here. All right, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I look forward to seeing your guys' replies to my PLC.